Hey, what's up guys? Today in this video, we are going to see how to implement a new feature in our video review application, which is a like functionality. So if you remember, we already had the like count in our videos table because we wanted to have that user interaction. So in this video, we are going to see from start till end what the functionality will be, how we will construct the database for that, how our APIs will be created using test driven development, and then in the later section, we will also see how we will handle that in the UI. Let's get started. So, the functionality is that if I click on any video, I am taken to the detail page, and here I have this widget. Now, obviously, this from a user UI standpoint may not look the most intuitive one, and I'm still working on it. But let's say this is the like widget. I can click on it and it will change to one like, which means I had already liked it. And if I click it again, then it shows me 2 likes. Similarly, if I have a video where there is no like, it just shows the thumbs up. If I click on it, it shows 1 like. So this is what we are going to do today. And we will start with the API first. So let me go to my PHP storm. The entry point is obviously an API URL called like. Now like has a controller, it will have a model, migrations, factories, and whatnot. So let's start with the first thing, which is the model. Or rather, let's first see the migration. So in the migration, I don't have too many things. Like is an entity, which is an enum field. Okay? And the enum field can have two possibilities in terms of value. So app.php, this is not the one which I was looking for. Let's see, config. Yes. So in this, I have added this array, which is video and comment. Okay. I want to say that the enum has only these two values, and that's what I fetched in this inside this migration. I wanted to keep it at a consistent place so that if tomorrow I need to add one, it is going to be only one place. So this is something which I do quite often, which is if there is something repeating, I tend to put it in the config. Let's move ahead. We have the enum values, we put it in the field, then we say that our default value will be video, then we have unsigned integer entity id. Okay, so we have entity id, and we also save the user id because obviously I need to know which user liked the entity. In the end, we have the entity which is being liked, the id of the entity, and the user. And I also decided to keep these two fields as indexes because my where conditions will be very frequently on these tables. I mean, on these columns. Okay. So the migration is done. Once the migration is done, let's look at the factory. So like factory, this is going to be quite simple. I have entity which I'm defaulting to video, entity ID. I'm right now defaulting to a video ID, which is being created by the video factory, and a user ID, which is created by the user factory. What's next? So the database is done. Now let's look at the model. Inside the app models, I have like.php. Let me close the other ones. For now, don't look at the booted method. We will come to it soon. But we have three fillable fields, which is entity, entity ID, and user ID. That's all that I have in the like.php model. I have particularly decided not to use relations because I don't see any requirement for me to load those relations in a way, and I'm not going to do a video and then like create. So I decided that I will not have a relation on this model. This is really not something which the Eloquent ORM recommends, but sometimes I do tend to deviate from that a bit because I really didn't see too much value in having that relationship. Okay, fine. Now we have the like model ready as well. Let's look at the controller and what it is doing. So like controller store method, in that, first of all, I got the config values for the entity which we had set in app.php. Why? Because while doing the validation, I have a validation which validates that the entity which is coming is of the value which I have defined in the array. If it is not, then it will throw an error. So in the validation, I am confirming that I have a field called entity, I have a field called entity ID. Okay, and then there are some checks happening. Again, this is something which I have written in the controller itself right now for ease of use, but believe me, because I have the test, I will soon refactor it and push everything to its appropriate service. Okay, let's look at what we are doing in the control. So post data, once it is validated, we check whether it is for entity video or for comment, because right now we only have two. So this if and else is working fine for me. So count video where ID is this, which means I haven't done an exist. Why? Because if I had done an exist here, it will make an query to the videos table just for the validation, and then again I'll have to load the video. So I decided not to do that and instead manually do the validation. By doing this, I am kind of saving one query. Okay, so I have a count. If I don't get it, that means that the video doesn't exist, and hence I'm throwing a validation error. The same goes for comment. Okay, by the way, there was one thing wrong which I just told you, which is I'm not saving a query, I'm just making a count, but I think exist was getting difficult for me because it can exist in two different tables. If it is for comments, then I would have to do comments table, the ID should exist in comments table, and if it is a video, then I'll have to do an exist on the video table, which would have meant a custom rule. So for now I have kept it like this. Okay, yeah, I'm not saving a query clearly because this is unavoidable. I'm just doing a like. Okay, fine, let's move along. So the validation is done. I'm throwing a validation exception if I don't find that entity, but then if I do find the entity, I need to understand that two things can happen. If the user is clicking on the button, it is possible that he is doing it for the first time, which means the user is liking that particular entity. In our case, either a video or a comment. So far, we have only implemented in video, so it's a video. But it is quite possible that he is hitting the button again, which means it's an unlike. So, what are we doing? For handling that situation, I am first checking whether I have that like with that user ID, with that entity ID, and the entity type. If I get this, then obviously it means that I have, or rather the user has already liked that entity. And if that is the case, I am deleting that row and I'm sending a response where data says unliked. Okay. And if I don't find it, okay, the if condition is an early return, so I don't need the else. Here we needed that else condition. Okay, it was kind of unavoidable. However, here I can avoid the else. There's no need for an else condition. If I don't find the like, then I create it. Straightforward, right? So this is done. And now let's look at what are the tests which I have written to back my functionality. So like entity test, I have 5 tests which I could think of. First is obviously the validations. It needs required fields. In that, I'm creating a user because the URL is for authenticated user. I'm acting as this new user which I just created. I'm sending a post request to the like entity URI or the URL. As you can see, this is the name that I have given, correct? I'm sending an empty array. So obviously it will trigger all the validations, and then I am confirming that I am getting these 2 fields in my validation error. Fine. What's the next test? I'm expecting that it will catch the error that the entity doesn't exist if actually that entity doesn't exist in the database, right? So what I have done, I've created that user, but I haven't created a video with the ID 1. So what will happen? I'll make that API call with this user which I just created to like.entity URL. Post data is here. The controller will first pass these two because I am passing something as required variable, sorry, but it will fail over here. If the entity ID is entity is video, it will try to get a count. The count in our case will be 0. So it will come over here in this if block and it will send a validation exception. That's what I have tracked here. I'm expecting a 422 status code and I'm expecting that the entity ID will have an error. Okay, so that's my second test case. The third test case is the happy path. I have a user, I have a video. That particular user is sending a like request to that particular video ID. So sending that post data, I am getting a status code of 201 and I am checking whether the data has the value liked or not, because this is the first time I'm hitting the like URL for that particular entity ID. Now, because it is going to be generic, I also checked for a comment. This is very similar to the previous test. The only difference is it's a comment. Okay. But we haven't implemented in the UI, so let's skip it for now. And the last one is the removal, or rather the unlike. So if a user has already liked a video, so the scenario is that I create a user from the user factory, sorry. I create a video from the video factory, and then I create a like entry where entity ID is the video ID and the user ID is user ID. I haven't passed the entity because the default value for entity is video. Okay. That's how you can many times save a lot of code by having some defaults to your database. It helps you in having null values, which are really problematic. And at any point, if you feel that 90% cases will get resolved by having a default value, you should definitely go for it. Okay. So this is our setup for the test. We have user, video, and like. Then I send one more post request to that same URL with the user. And obviously this time, because this user has already liked that particular video, it should send a status code of 201, but the data should be unliked. So that's what is our API going to do. It has a database. I showed you the migration. It has, we have a supporting factory for it. There's a model and whatnot. Okay. Now, let's go to an important piece which I told you that I will show you later, which is inside the like, I have this protected static function booted. So these are like hooks which are getting fired whenever certain events are happening to that model. The first one, as you can understand, is created. What is happening here? Now, if we look at the database migration for videos, this is the one. I have like count. Now, if I go to the like controller, you can see I am doing an insert over here into the likes table, correct? But I have not incremented the count of the video by 1, or I have not decremented the count or decreased the count of the like count in the videos table when the, the video is being unliked. But still, I need that count, right? Now you can do one more thing, which is in a call a function which does an update to the video row. But then that will mean you will be repeating a lot of code, or you can also write it in the service. But there is definitely one more way which I'm going to show now, which I feel is a little more elegant. Some may argue that they will have to look at the model to understand what the code is doing, but then you need to know the models, right? That's your entities that you're dealing with. So I feel this code is quite useful here. It's quite safe. Okay, so what are we doing over here? When the like entity is created, we check the entity. If the entity is video, okay, let me remove these loggers, no use. If the entity is type video, then we load a video with the entity ID, we increment the like count, and we save it. Similarly, if the like is getting deleted, that means someone is unliking it. So in that case, we are decreasing or decrementing the like count for that video. This is how I am able to get an updated like count to the video model without writing too much code, because that's already captured over here. Okay, there are quite a few Eloquent methods available. Let me see if I can show you the list. Find usage base method. Yes, base has, can I get all the method names? No, I don't think so. Obviously the documentation has that, so that will not be a problem. You can go to the documentation and you will find all the methods, boot methods available inside a model. But right now what we are dealing with is the created and the deleted. If you want updated as well, you will get that, but in our case the like table entry is never going to get updated, because it is either you are making an insert or you are removing it, delete, right? So yes, that's all there is to it. All my tests are passing. You can see there are what, around 44, no, 45 tests. Everyone is passing. So the API code is this. Now let's move on to the front end code. I'll go to Visual Studio Code. Now we are looking at which page? We are looking at the video details, which means video view. So go to the pages, video view, and then ID. Okay, in here, what are the changes that I have made? Let's see. The only change in this page is I haven't taken a pull. Let me do that. Actually, the code was on GitHub. I was working on the desktop, and so I didn't have the updated code on my laptop. Okay, this is the one, correct? So on the video detail page, we have the video player, and just below that, we have our like component. The like component takes the type, because this like component will be used inside the comment as well. So the component will have to be modular enough to be adaptable to that change. So the type is being passed, the model ID is being passed, count, that is the number of likes, that is passed as well, and handle success. This handle success is a function which is going as a prop. Why? So what will happen is when the handle click prop is called by the like component, where we are sending this function as a property, right? It will check based on the action whether it was a like or an unlike. And based on that, on the UI, I am either incrementing the like count or I am decrementing. Now, one thing which I had to do was I had to keep the likes count as a state variable because the video is coming as a prop and I cannot change the value of a prop because it is a read only object. So what I had to do was do a use state. In the use state, I kept the like count as video.like count because that is the prop which I'm getting. Okay. And when this handle click is called, I check whether the action is liked or not. I get the new like count and then I set it. Okay. Make sense? And hence you can see likes is the value that I'm passing over here as count and not video.like count. There's a slight difference. Okay. Because otherwise you will pass the video dot like count, and when the increment happens you will continue to show the old data, which is not something which we want to do. Okay, so that's our main video detail page where the like is being handled. Now let's go inside the like component. So inside the like component, obviously we have an interface for props where we are saying that the type can be either video or a comment. It needs a model ID, it needs a count, and it needs the function. So when a like happens, the like component will just call this function and be done with it. So I'm getting all these props in here. Okay. And then our component is quite straightforward. By the way, I'm using Bootstrap icons. So this is the BI format for the icons. And on the div, I have the handle. But first, let's see what we are doing. We have an icon, which is the thumbs up. If my count is greater than 0, then I'm showing the count. Otherwise, I don't. Okay, because 0 like doesn't really make sense. So I am doing a condition over there. And after that, if my count is greater than 1, then I'm doing likes. Otherwise, it is like. So that's my logic in terms of the rendering of the component. And now let's look at the logic around this. So when the handle click function is triggered, which is based on the click of this div, I am calling the like service add like method. In that I am passing entity and entity ID. So this means basically we are calling this API, and hence I am sending these two post data objects. Correct? So this is the data. In here, what we have done is our like service takes that post data. It calls the auth service to get the headers. If you're not already aware, this function basically takes the token from the cookie and returns the header, which is authorization, bearer, and then token. Okay, so I have the token, I send it to Axios, I make an axios.post call. Okay, I am using a URL service like entity. That's where my URL is saved. So every URL is in one place basically. Okay, so this is the URL, this is the data, and this is the header. Okay, with that done, we are able to make an Axios post call. With that post call, okay, it responds back. We check if the status is 201, and if it is, then we send that response data to the function which is coming to us as a prop. Now that response data, whether it is like or not, hence is being passed through this to our handle click function. In the handle click function, we are getting this, which is an action. Let me see, I'll just add string over here. It's a good practice. So the TypeScript is aware of the type of attribute which is coming. Okay, so action of type string is coming as a argument to that function, and then I'm saying that the new like is going to be likes plus 1 if it is liked, and it is going to be likes minus 1 if it was not liked, which means it will be unliked. And with the new value, I am setting it in my state. Correct? So, yes, this is how I am able to get this functionality where I can go to any video, and if I want, I can just like that video and the count automatically gets updated and it goes to normal mode, or I am able to unlike if I click on it again. Now there are certain things which I will change in the UI. For example, a state to maintain whether I as a user have liked this video or not. Okay, on the dashboard in the listing, I would want to show the like count which is already there in the videos table. So those are some changes which I will do to this UI, but you generally get a sense, right, what we were trying to do. This is how I was able to add the like functionality. I showed you the API and the front end on how to implement this. I would request you to go through this application, use it, send me your feedback, comment below, tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like about this app, some interesting features which you may want on this and you want me to work on them, so that if there is something interesting, definitely I'll try to create a video out of that, and hopefully we will be able to grow this app into something which is interesting and useful for others to use as well. So thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, do click on the thumbs up icon and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.